Imagine 12 college football teams with prime football players playing in high stakes football games against some of the best teams in the nation, playing for a national championship trophy. Immovable defense versus unstoppable offensives, going through a cutthroat playoff sequence. This happens every year in January, but I would love to see it happen on a higher scale. Now for some background info. College football playoffs started in 2014, and since then, there's been many discussions by analysts whether it should be 4, 6, 8, or 10, or 12 teams. I think it should be expanded to 12 teams, and I'm going to tell you why. Now, fan attraction. College football is one of the leading companies in the United States. America loves their football, and they also love watching young kids go at it every single weekend. Now, according to Griffin McVeigh, who is a writer from SMG, states that seeing these schools and others like them in the playoff atmospheres will appeal to people who want something different. Fans of sports will tune in because of Indiana, which has the second winning percentage in FBS history, can still compete for a national championship. Now, what McVeigh is referring to is that Indiana lately hasn't been in the college football playoffs. Not many teams have. I mean, there's only been 4 teams allowed per year. Now, if we put that to 12, I'm not saying Indiana would make it this year, but there's a higher chance of Indiana and their fans to play and watch their games, which makes it even more exciting for their fans. Power Five. The Power Five conferences are the highest Division I football conferences in the United States. That would consist of Big Ten, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC, SEC. Now, all of these teams in these conferences lead to very, very big games that are high stakes. Even during the regular season, there could always be an upset between 2 teams. Now, according to G. Wallace, who's a writer from Bleacher Report, states that 2014's biggest debate revolved around whether Baylor or TCU would snag the 4th spot. As it turned out, neither of the Big 12's 2 best teams were worthy, thanks to Ohio State jumping them both in large due to the demolition of Wisconsin in the Big Ten title game. Baylor and TCU were both mad, but someone was always going to be upset. If the field was expanded to 8 teams, he is only referring to 8 teams. I am referring to 12. It would allow the champions of the top 5 leagues to qualify automatically, along with 3 at-large teams. Even more if there was 12. That, in turn, might end the angst over the SEC bias by opening the door to multiple qualifiers from 3 leagues. Now, what he's talking about with the SEC bias is that 2 SEC teams always make it in the top 4 every single year. It has since 2014. Maybe 1 year I think it hasn't. But anyway, this opening up to 12 teams would get rid of the SEC bias completely. There would be plenty of teams from the Pac-12, from ACC, SEC, Big Ten, and Big 12. Now to discuss money. Obviously, this is like one of the number one things that you have to think about when discussing how many teams should be in the college football playoff. According to Matt Balvance, who's a senior vice president for analytics, states before expansion, college football is around 25% of what the NFL is doing. So think of really a little under $20 per fan in today's deals. But if we were to expand it to 12, that moves it up closer to about 40% of what the NFL is. Now, to break that down, when he's talking about $20 per fan, he's talking about ticket sales and TV sales. So people who watch on TV and people who actually go to these events. Now, breaking down the 40% of what the NFL is, that is literally insane. That's the second leading company in the NFL when it comes to sports. And that would be crazy. Imagine having 40% of the revenue of what the NFL has. That would be only good for the sport and good for the programs who are in it. Now, some people might argue that making these kids play even more games than they need to would be detrimental on their health, mental health, and physical health. But I am here to argue, as a college football athlete myself, there's always a chance for that upset or that crazy play that you make, and that would get you into the NFL. Maybe not me per se, but that kid from Alabama, that made that great play in that national championship game. He's going to get some looks on an NFL team, and that's what every single college football player's goal is to make it out of college and to go to the NFL. This would be better for players and have crazy plays for ESPN the next day. Now, there needs to be 12 teams involved with the system. It would intrigue more fans from teams who usually don't make it, like Indiana, like I mentioned earlier. It would allow access to each Power 5 program, which would make games even more intense and would bring in more money to the NCAA and competing colleges.